All right, welcome back to Speed Doxathon 2024. I am here at the Mancunian Nightmare with code Veronica X. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Guys, my name is TheMancunianNightmare. Great to be back here at SDAT. For anyone thinking, well, I don't recognise this name, that's because I was under a different name when I last ran this game at this event, which was Liam McNinety. Um, so we're going to be running Resident Evil Code Veronica, and thanks to everyone's generosity, I've just found out that I'm not going to be running any percent as we initially intended. We're going to be running S rank. I'm so glad that I've been practicing S rank and not just focusing on any percent because I wouldn't do that. So Code Veronica is I'm going to say fourth installment in the mainline Resident Evil series, and it sort of bridges the gap between number 2 and number 5, following Claire and Chris Redfield. A fun fact, up until I believe it was Wednesday, the category that I'm about to run, I was actually the world record holder for. And then just before an event, someone decided to come and take it away from me, which was fantastic. But without further ado, let's get into the run. Do you guys want me to count in when to start the timer?
Yeah, give us a countdown.
Cool. All right then. So 3, 2, 1, and go. Biohazard. The good thing is there's not a huge amount of difference between any percent and S rank. It's just a tiny little bit of storyline difference. And there was actually a change to how the guys on speedrun.com time these runs very recently. It was only a couple of weeks ago. So it used to be that you're... Oh, lovely. We're starting with a couple of bites already. Marathon meme striking early. So it used to be that the runs were timed by the in-game timer. And they recently made a change and decided that it would be from load remover time, simply because when runs were being timed from the in-game time, it was almost pay to win. You know, the better that your computer were, the more likely that you were going to get a higher time. And obviously the moderators had decided that that was no longer fair, so changed the timing. I'm not going to complain about that because it allowed me to hit a couple of world records. Wow, that never happens. I normally take at least one bite there.
Nah, you gotta really sell it. You gotta say, look at that. Perfect, just like every other run I've ever done.
I can't lie like that. I mean, the avoiding zombies in this game it's really difficult to describe. So you would assume the idea is to just keep as much distance as possible, but it doesn't entirely work out that way in Code Veronica. It's very similar to one remake where you almost have to get a little bit close to them to draw movement away and turn your body away from them in order to avoid them grabbing you. It's really strange how that works out, but that's Capcom.
Jank in a Capcom game? No way. I can't imagine. From 2000, no less.
I love some of the things in Capcom games. Like there'll be a section coming up later on where we stood in a room full of gas with a lit lighter in our hands, and it's just like, come on, guys. Well, that being said, if you're going to watch a Resident Evil game and highlight that that's the most unrealistic thing to happen, then I think you're not really paying attention too much.
I feel like that's the point of Resident Evil, though. It's got to be a little bit absurd at the very least, and it usually ends up being very absurd, but that's why we love them.
Yeah, you're not kidding. I think with this game as well, it contains... I'm going to say possibly the most disliked character in the entire series in Steve Burnside. And to be fair, he's annoying, don't get me wrong, but he's just a kid. He's a 17-year-old boy. It's not his fault he's irritating.
Real quick, we do have another target up for donations. We later on this evening we'll be seeing Waluigi's Taco Stand, played by West Dog, and if we meet $150, he will make the in-game tacos. So we have a little over 5 hours remaining for that one, and it's a $150 incentive. We also need an additional $150 to play Clue on the hardest difficulty. Really looking forward to seeing that. That one is the most impending. That one will be starting in about 4 hours from now. Really looking forward to seeing that happen. Let's get some donations in. Let's make some things happen.
So that line that we just got there in the graveyard, that was actually really rare. When you're going through there, it's one of those, it'll either go really, really well, like what that one did, or it will go terribly and you'll get bitten by everything. There never really seems to be an in-between. So I'm really happy with how that just turned out, actually.
Sounds like speedrunning. It's never okay. It's either the best thing or the worst thing.
So you guys will notice that I've still got the playing manual in my inventory there. It's paramount that we keep it there for the time being because that's how we're going to activate the glitch later. So there's two main glitches with this game. One where you glitch a specific type of ammo so that you get a lot more of it than what you actually have. Or the one that we're going to be running is to turn a mixed herb on limited use. That's the other side of the S rank run as well, is that you're not actually allowed to use any first aid sprays. So from memory, the criteria to get an S rank, which is what you need to do to unlock the rocket launcher for the main game, you have to beat the game in 4.5 hours or less. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say we're definitely going to hit that criteria.
If you don't, the marathon is in a lot of trouble.
I somehow think I can manage 4.5 hours. You cannot use any first aid sprays. You cannot save apart from the mid-game interval, which is kind of like a free option to save. And you also have to save Rodrigo, who was the chap that we saw right in the beginning when he let us out of the prison cell. In most runs, if you're running any percent, unfortunately, I don't think you actually see it happen, but Rodrigo will meet his demise. And the fun fact being is that part of the S rank criteria is that you have to save him. Well, do you know what? We won't have any spoilers. Let's see what happens to it. Although I've just realised I say that, and we're actually not going to because we'll be skipping the cutscene. So you have to skip all cutscenes in the run because cutscenes will add to the in-game timer. Which when I was going through this on the PlayStation 4 to hit the Platinum Trophy, I did not realise that. A nice little avoidance of bites there in the corridor. Although, to be honest, avoiding the bites there, it's not actually as impressive as what it looks. As long as you just stick to that far wall, you should be safe. Now, there'll be a lot of item pickups that you'll notice. You don't actually see Claire bending over to pick the item up, which is what we want. It's a tiny little glitch in the game where if you press right on the control pad, as well as pressing action, it will skip the sequence of her leaning down to pick it up. So there we've just seen the herb glitch being activated. So basically what you do, and this is why we keep the the playing manual in the inventory, is we're sort of tricking the game into believing that the mixed herb is no longer a one-use item. Now you'll have noticed what I did when I mixed the herbs is I didn't open the manual through the item screen. We went into the file section. You have to do it that way, otherwise the glitch will not work. And unfortunately, you only get one attempt to do it. So if you mess it up, you ain't running glitch no more. I've actually had that happen to me live at a marathon as well. It was at an in-person event too, and I clicked on the playing manual too early in my items. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I take a hell of a lot of damage during this run. I'm going to have to come up with a way to not die.
That's terrifying. To in real time be like, well, this has now become a much more interesting run, maybe more interesting than you wanted it to be.
See, if I'd have watched that run back, or if anyone was to watch that run back, if it was still there, you wouldn't actually think that I was anywhere near as nervous as what I was. I think that I handled it really well, but inside I was screaming.
There's a lot to be said about maintaining your composure under those situations, though. and it's especially fun when you know someone that knows the run really well, like someone from your community or another runner is like, "Oh no," and everyone else is like, "Oh wow, he's playing really well," and then there's like 4 people like, "Oh no," because they understand your peril.
And I think that's what I like about running games like this at events is that, like you've just said there, if you can keep your composure and not make it too obvious, then if you make a mistake, no one's going to know anyway. Unless, like you say, they understand the game, they run the game themselves.
Especially if you don't mention it, sometimes you can get away with it and just let those mistakes kind of fly under the radar.
Yeah.
Some mistakes are too obvious, though. I mean, there's obviously if you just die in the middle of a room, you can't really play that off as a death warp if they see you running back to the room 3 times in a row.
I actually thought I'd not gone over enough with that crane then. It's funny because I always end up thinking that when I'm running, and if you don't go far enough over, then when it grabs that crate, it's going to drop it. I always seem to think I've not gone far enough and that the crate's going to drop, but it never actually happens. Although I have a feeling that it's going to be one of those that if I start to get too overconfident with it and think, oh yeah, I'll be fine, it's not going to drop, that'll be the point where it does. Nice little in and out with the platform zombies there. Now there is a bit of a quicker line there where you sort of go through the middle of them, but it's a lot harder to pull off, and I think the time difference is about half a second. So yeah, if you're running for the IGT world record, then you probably will want to take that line down the middle. Otherwise, you're better off just playing it safe and taking the wide line instead. It would be brilliant to see more people start to pick this run up and start to learn it. And a fun fact is that the strats that I use and the route that I take is actually all self-taught. I've never sat down and really researched this run, purely because it's a game that I've always known really well. And even with the route and the strats that I've taught myself, I still feel like there's time there that I can save without having to research it. So until I get to a point where I think, right, there's physically nothing else now for me to find, I don't think there's really any value in researching anything.
True, you got to get the optimization in place before you can really start to make changes.
Yeah, 100%.
How long have you been working on this game?
So across all platforms, I've been running Code Veronica now for around 3.5 years. So this one we're playing on a PlayStation 3 version, which the HD version, so PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360, probably is the best one to use because it runs the quickest. I did also dabble in the Dreamcast version, which is just Resident Evil Code Veronica. There's no X at the title. And it was the very first version of this game. But the difference being is that's the standard definition version, so it runs a little bit slower. And there's also no door skip either, so the run, I want to say, is around about 35 minutes in real time longer. Oh, okay, we've got Bandersnatch deciding not to behave. Because why would you not? I'm just going to take a safety heal there real quick. So usually what would happen is his arm would stretch to the back of the room and hit the wall, and he'd sort of throw himself over. Well, apparently he's decided that he didn't want to play ball tonight.
More marathon walk.
So again, shooting the barrels there is more of a marathon safety strat that I'll do. Usually you would just attempt to run past them, run past the zombies, and then just run past them when we have to go back there with Claire later on. But I think most people will tell you that when you're running at an event like this, you generally do tend to take one or two safer strats than what you maybe would do if you were shooting for a PB. I think what I like here though is that I don't have the added pressure of having live split open, so right now I could be a minute in front, I could be 5 minutes behind, and I'd be none the wiser. So let's get chat debating, because this is something that has been brought up so many times, especially in recent months. Do we think that we're going to see a remake of this game? Now, personally, I'll give my thoughts on the matter. I both want and don't want a remake of Code Veronica. Now, I really want it because, you know, it's my favourite Resident Evil game, and I think it's got an absolutely fantastic story to it. The reason that I don't want it is I'd rather not have a remake at all than have a bad version of it, because I feel like it would then affect my overall feeling about the game.
That's a tricky one, because Capcom's been making a lot of money off of their recent Resident Evil games, including their remakes, but the remakes that they're making all their money off of are, like, obviously some of the most successful games they've ever made. And this one, a little bit more of a sleeper hit by comparison to, of course, RE2, 3, and 4. But they have been kind of, like, working through them in order. It wouldn't really surprise me.
I think those of us that have played Resident Evil 4 Remake will probably agree. The way that it ended left it very much open to go into a Resident Evil 5 remake. The question is whether Capcom will go straight to that and skip Code Veronica. Now, I don't feel like they will. I feel as if eventually this game will get some sort of remake because the demand is there for it. But then again, it's how successful ultimately that would be.
That's true. But it'd be interesting to see. I think that more people would benefit from playing this game.
100%, yeah. I mean, as far as I can recall, this one, with the original games, it did come out before Resident Evil 4, but I can understand why Capcom went to 4 after 3 remake, because it's not something that I like to admit, because again, I feel this game is leaps and bounds ahead of Resident Evil 4, but that's just my personal opinion. But there was a hell of a lot more money to be made with 4 remake, and I can respect that. Like any other business, they're going to go where the money's at, aren't they?
Yeah, it was actually quite a bit before Resident Evil 4, because this was in 2000 for its first release. And RE4 wasn't in, it was 2005. That was like a late GameCube title.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really caught me by surprise. I didn't know there was 5 years between the
Yeah.
two games.
It was a lot.
I think if
It's
someone was to ask me, like, how much of a gap was there between Code Veronica and 4?
you would think 2 years,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
2 years.
You would think that it was like a fairly early GameCube. No, it was a late GameCube game. It was nearly the Wii.
Wow.
Yeah.
That has really surprised me. Speaking of 4, though, I don't know if there's anyone else here in the chat that will agree with this. I actually found that Resident Evil 4 gave me a newfound love for the original game. Like, after playing the remake, I went back to the original game and I found that I appreciated it a damn sight more.
You are not the first person I've heard say that. And I think that that game just aged so well that you get an appreciation for really all the things it was doing on just a GameCube, and in a time where they hadn't even really ironed out a lot of modern conventions yet, but they made such a nice special product, which is it's what I really love about a lot of games from that period.
The biggest thing with Resident Evil 4, a lot of people that have played the franchise for a long time will tell you that number 4 is where it started to change, where it became more. It started to become more action oriented than survival horror. And I definitely agree with that statement. I think it is a lot more action based than what the 3 titles prior to it were. But what it also did was it brought an entirely new group of people into the franchise as well.
For sure. I think that that's very much the case.
And ultimately, anything that's going to draw attraction to what is by far my favourite series of games, well, that can only be a good thing. Funny little story with this particular room. Myself and Suspended Doll, who I can see there in the chat, we were watching somebody play this game casually not too long ago, and we were both trying to explain the solution to this puzzle, but the way that we were explaining it was so different. So Suspended Doll was describing the pictures that he had to hit, whereas I've always seen it as a taking a cheeky little bite there. The way I always remember it is to give the pictures numbers. So I'll start with the first picture that we hit, and I'll call that number 1, and then I'll number them all 1 through 6. And I was trying to explain it that same way to the chap that was playing the game, and it just wasn't sinking in. So once we input this code now and we move up the corridor, we're going to get our first look at the Ashford residence. Very creepy little house, but in the same regard, I'd love to visit. Yeah, as she's just said there in the chat that we were trying to explain that puzzle to, in the end he got that annoyed with us that he just Googled the answer instead. Oh, cheeky little slap there from the Bandersnatch. This part coming up now, when we enter the yard before the Ashford residence, is really going to show how sometimes you need to go towards an enemy to bait its movement in order to not get hit by it. Or hopefully it will anyway. Now that I've said that, I'm probably going to get hit a few times.
Tempting fate? No way.
Well, we took one hit, but to be honest, it's very, very rare that you get through there without at least taking one slap. You'll notice as well that we've got the lighter equipped. That's because when we come into here, there's bats around, but when you have the lighter in your hand, the bats won't actually come towards you. Now, I always get tempted, whenever I'm running behind pace here, the next split that would be activated is the key that you can see glistening on the bed there. And whenever I'm running behind pace, I always say, do you know what, I could cheese this split and just go and pick the key up straight away before doing what I'm doing now. But then I'd only be lying to myself. And it's only going to save me time on that one particular split. It would be made back on the next one.
Real quick, we did just get a $5 anonymous donation. Clue, please. They're looking to see the hard mode incentive met for Clue, and also contributed towards the sheriff outfit for Leon and RE2. So please get those donations coming in. We're trying to meet the hard mode Clue incentive, and once that gets done, because that is the most pressing matter, we can start working on seeing those IRL not hot dogs. Oh my god, tacos being made. You know, it's basically say hot dog incentive was yesterday, taco incentive is today. That's how things are going. Anyway, keep those coming in. Back to you.
Can I just say as well, congratulations so far on the mega amount of money that has been raised. What's the total now? Is it 1,320? I'm seeing.
Yeah, which is great for less than less than less than half of our total event. We've been doing having a really good time so far.
Absolute GGs, guys. Keep those donations coming in. Obviously, it's for an absolutely fantastic cause. And I had to keep myself talking there because this room now, it's the room that I hate the most. That room can go so bad. It didn't go too bad there, actually, which I'm kind of happy about. I have just realised I've gone into autopilot too much and I've not done anything in terms of meeting S-rank criteria as yet, so we need to make a quick detour here.
Well, yeah, I think that's a good idea. We should do that.
I completely forgot. I just completely went into autopilot mode there.
You're still gonna meet the 4.5 hours requirement, right?
I think we'll just edge it, yeah.
Okay. Well, then I think we're all right. Yeah, take your detour. We're all right.
And you know what? It's a good job that I remembered it at that point because I wasn't too far off being at a stage where it'd have been too late.
You have to do the old report card trick and change whatever your grade was to an S.
That now gives me more items than what I'm used to, and I think would have been an issue, so I'm just going to drop the handgun there real quick. I would have been dropping the handgun very soon anyway, so that's not too bad. I think this is actually the first time that I've ever ran this game in an event and I've done anything other than any percent. But it's fine, guys. There was no detour. I don't know what anyone's on about. This has been absolutely perfect so far. World record pace, this.
Sometimes optimized movement looks like backtracking.
Yeah, completely intentional. It wasn't a mistake. It was a new strat. New routing. Oh, nice. So those two zombies there, when that bookcase moves, they're so difficult to avoid, purely because of the limited amount of space that you have. So normally you will take one bite at least going through there, but then typically we don't, and then we go into the next section and take a bite off a zombie that is usually really easy to avoid, because that's how these things work. We're about to meet, well, actually, what I thought was the zombie with the most hit points in the series. I've actually found out that's not true. But even so, he is an absolute tank.
Not the most obnoxious, just very obnoxious.
Exactly. Find our way through here. And now we're coming into the room that I mentioned earlier. So, as you can see, Claire's still got the lighter equipped in her hand. And now what happens is that the door locks and starts to fill with gas. You wouldn't think to put that lighter away now, would you?
But how would you be able to see? To be fair, the gas is settling at the bottom of the room, which means as long as you keep the lighter nice and high, it's probably fine.
Yeah, push that statue as quickly as you can. Oh, I'll be so glad when I don't have to see these guys anymore. Okay. There we go. S rank is now still achievable.
Just like we drew it up.
Quick. I started running off in the entirely wrong direction. This is shows you just how much I run S rank in comparison to any percent. So from here now, the route in between the two categories is identical. There's literally nothing different now that we need to do other than just not die and meet the time requirement. Everything that's different now we have already done.
What's the time difference then between an 90% and an S rank run? Can't be much.
No, even in real time, 2.5 minutes, maybe 3, give or take.
Yeah,
It's
practically
really not
nothing.
a huge amount. In fact, something I'm going to do differently than what I did in my world record. So I'm going to come and grab this now. would have made more sense to come in here while I had the light thinking about it. So the reason that I went and grabbed that case is it contains gunpowder to make explosive arrows with. In the S rank, you do need slightly more than you do in any percent. Because the big worm that we encountered earlier on, or we would have encountered if we had cutscenes playing, we're also going to kill him. Which I don't do in any percent, because all of my ammo is accounted for.
Just a reminder, we are making progress towards those incentives, but we are still looking for another $145 in the next 3 hours or so in order to get Clue played on the hardest difficulty. It was a big hit when we did it a couple years ago. I'm really looking forward to hosting that again. And then we also have an incentive for later tonight, while Luigi's Taco Stand make the in-game tacos. So please get those donations in, and when you do, don't forget to contribute to one of the polls. You get to contribute to a target and a poll with the same donation, which can help pick the character skin for Hollow Knight, Leon's outfit for RE2 Remake, and more of the attributes for the Speed Docks Burger Assembly.
Just out of curiosity, what are the options for the Leon costume?
They can go original, which currently has no money attributed to it because why be boring? The noir outfit and the sheriff outfit. Sheriff is winning, so it could be fun. We would need a huge resurgence in interest in the original outfit of people that want to be boring. But hey, if you want to be boring, show us with your contributions to save the children how boring you are. Or we can settle the sheriff or noir. Be cool as it.
I'm not sure which of those two I'd prefer between the sheriff or noir. If I had to choose, I think I would edge more towards the noir.
Oh, and just then we do have $10 from Mannequin Moss, who says PB loading. Let's see it. Is it too late? Can we still PB?
Honestly, I genuinely couldn't tell you.
Then that's a yes. If we can't disqualify it, then that means it's let's do it. Let's give yourself a good PB VOD.
In fact, I think if I compare it to the run that I submitted to obtain the world record, we probably can. The reason that I went into that battering full of bats to pick up that ammo is I picked up the extra ammo somewhere completely different in the world record run, and I think there was quite a big time difference. Oh, dropped a few frames there, but nothing major. Nice. It does actually feel like we are making really good time here, to be fair.
Every time you walk into a room where you're like, oh, that could have gone bad, but I nailed it. And I'm like, that's great. That's how you make a good run. So I feel like there have been far more narrow escapes and good things happening than anything else.
But as long as we get through the Nosferatu fight, that's all I'm bothered about. I hate that guy with a passion.
Clear.
The self-destruct system has
We gotta get to that airport.
There is a possibility in the Nosferatu fight that you can be poisoned, which works in exactly the same way as Resident Evil 1 with the snake. You can't just use blue herb to cure it, you have to go and collect some serum later on. But with the new timing method now, I don't think that's a huge amount of time loss. Well, I say that, it's because of the load time difference, you're probably talking 45 to 60 seconds, which I say isn't a huge amount of time, but when you're gunning for a PB, it is.
The self-destruct system has activated. All personnel evacuate immediately. The self-destruct system has been activated. All personnel evacuate immediately.
But although later on in the run the game will come up, end of first half, would you like to save? I'd probably say right about now is the midway point of the run. Give or take. But what would have been Disc 2 on the GameCube and Dreamcast, it is slightly slightly quicker than what Disc 1 would be.
That is one thing that we don't get anymore. It's something very dramatic about a disc change.
Do you know what games I think gave you that feeling the most? Final Fantasy. Back when you had games that were
for sure.
3-4 discs long, and like you say, you just don't get that feeling anymore, do you?
It's like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. You really feel like there was a clean break, which I mean we're kind of getting with like the Final Fantasy VII Remake, because they're releasing the games years apart. But it's not as fun as actually changing the disc in the machine, that's for sure.
I'll be honest with you, Final Fantasy VII Remake, that exact point that you've just highlighted there, I don't think I've ever been as infuriated in my life. And the thing was, all the warning signs were there. Everybody said that it was going to come out in parts, and I don't know why, but I just didn't believe it. I refused to believe it. And then we waited. I mean, how long was it that we waited for Final Fantasy VII Remake? Because I feel like that was one that just got delayed and delayed and delayed.
It was like 6 years.
Yeah, so to wait that long to then find out that what you've actually got is only a third of what you want.
You got the disc 1, yeah.
And don't get me wrong.
Square sometimes makes interesting decisions. It's nothing compared to, what was it, Final Fantasy 15, with it being 10 years past its projected launch date.
Yeah, fair. I mean, I'll be fair. Final Fantasy VII Remake, because I haven't yet played Rebirth, I think aesthetically it was stunning. It was such a well-made remake.
Without a question.
Maybe let's hit the door before I try skipping. But the issue that I faced is I paid a lot of money for that game. I pre-ordered it digitally, so I think I paid around 80 quid, maybe even 90, and I've still not beat it.
Yeah, that is a lot.
Just casually taking down the first boss in the run like it was nothing. A lot of people will tell you that this one, in terms of the original tank-controlled Resident Evil games, this one is the most difficult. And I can agree in some regards. There are certain sections that are a lot harder, but if you know what to do, It's really not. And the biggest example of that is going to be the next boss fight that we come up to. I've heard so many people say that the Tyrant on the plane in Code Veronica is one of the hardest bosses in the entire series, and it's going to take me about 8 seconds, give or take, about 8 seconds. But then a lot of people won't actually know the use of the BOW rounds, which I've just loaded into the grenade launcher, mainly because this is their only appearance in the series, and there's only 3 of them in the entire game. Now what the BOW rounds do is anything that has been infected with the T virus specifically, so no T Veronica, no G virus, just the T virus, which the Tyrant is, each shot that you hit them with a BOW round takes exactly half of their remaining HP away. So if used right, the BOW rounds can be extremely useful, but in theory you just can't actually kill anything with them.
Right, so unless you know how they work, you would think, why bother?
Yeah, because if you use them on the wrong thing, they're completely useless. They won't do anything.
You're like, oh yeah, it doesn't work, and then that's even, yeah, and even if you use something on the right enemy type, since it's only cutting HP by a percentage, you wouldn't even notice.
No, exactly. But yeah, the trick there, use the 3 BOW rounds, and then you can either use 4 explosive bolts like we did, or you can use 2 acid rounds from the grenade launcher, and then you hit the catapult and bye-bye Tyrant. There was a run that I had quite recently where I did that fight and then I had a very colourful message for the Tyrant there, which I won't say, but it was funny. Now these moths here, they are my most hated enemy in the Resident Evil series. Those and sweepers. So, again, I think this is the only game in the series that sweepers are actually a thing. And they look identical to hunters, other than the fact that they're purple, not green. And the difference with them being is they can poison you. And I really want to know who at Capcom came up with that as an idea, because as if hunters aren't scary enough, you know, the fact that they can kill you if you're in any health condition other than fine, somebody's then decided to make that even worse and make them poisonous. Like, some people just want to see the world burn. But I would love to just have a conversation with that person and find out what was going through their heads when they came up with the idea of sweepers.
I would love to see if you could, like, trace whether it's enemy designs or game mechanics between games, and you get, like, a spreadsheet of, like, all these horrible enemies. I'm like, oh, that was all Jeff. Like, Jeff insisted that, like, this enemy be poisonous and that this enemy be way too fast. And you're like, oh, and I can channel my rage at a particular person.
Yeah, just get them in a room and like, okay, so you came up with this enemy that is incredibly fast, it's incredibly strong, it can kill you unless you're absolutely perfect on your health, it's poisonous. Why? Why do you hate us so much, Jeff? What have we ever done to you?
And then it's like, well, Jeff also came up with the font for Devil May Cry. And you're like, okay, well, maybe we can let it go.
Speaking of, did you guys know that Devil May Cry was the originally pitched idea for Resident Evil 4?
Really? That's interesting, and I can kind of see it.
if you play through the game, you can notice a lot of similarities. I mean, you're going to do anyway because obviously it's made by the same developer. But in terms of menu sounds and sounds throughout the game, it does sound very similar to the Resident Evil games prior to it. But yeah, initially, Devil May Cry was going to be Resident Evil 4, and then they sort of changed that idea at the last minute and made Devil May Cry a game in its own right.
That's kind of cool. I did not know that.
Yeah, so as just been said there in chat, it was the original pitched idea, but then it was determined that it wasn't Resident Evil-esque enough.
That is such a Capcom thing. They do that all the time. Where they start a series off as a spin-off or something of one, and then it just goes in a completely different direction. Or I guess the reverse case with like Street Fighter 3, where they're like, "Oh, we're gonna make a new fighting game," and at the last minute they panic and call it Street Fighter 3 and put Ken and Ryu in it.
Yeah, always the safety option there.
Which is 100% what happened. Yeah, and it didn't work because that game lost them so much money.
I have noticed that the quick grabs in this run are coming off a heck of a lot more than what they normally do. And now that I've said that, I won't get a single quick grab for the remainder of this run now. Resi 7 isn't panicking and slapping Resi on the box. Yeah, I can see what you mean there, Moss. I remember when Resi 7 first came out, and I refused to play it for a long time because, and I quote at the time, "This is more Silent Hill than it is Resident Evil." Now, whether that's true or not, I don't believe I'm qualified enough to say because I've actually never completed Silent Hill. It just didn't feel like a Resident Evil style game for me at the time. But again, that was another one that, oh wow, those moths never behave themselves like that. Like, literally, ever. I know what you meant before about, like, I've said that a few times now, like, oh wow, this never happens, that never happens, but trust me when I say that never happens. We've got somebody smiling down on this run. But now we come into the biggest meme probably in the entire run. So I more than likely will go quiet during this part just to try and make sure that I get it right.
Are you ready?
Okay.
Yeah, no poison. There we go. Nice.
Brilliant.
Now, words cannot describe how nervous I get going into that fight. I have no idea what I was just doing there. For some reason I decided that my inventory didn't look right and needed to be changed. Oh, okay, and Gravedigger's deciding that he doesn't want to die. That should have been enough to kill him. What is going on? Wow. Thankfully, I have just about enough explosive bolts left that we're going to need for the final boss, but yeah, I don't know what just happened. It's like Gravedigger had been to the gym and been working out before we got here. He really was bulky boy there. Nosferatu can be the run killer. Yeah. I've lost so many runs to Nosferatu. And my first ever in-person speedrun event, I died there twice, and I ended up getting uncontrollably nervous to a point where the guys that were running the event just said, right, just take a second going into the fight, Liam, and just try and compose yourself. I was like, but it's not going to work! But we got it.
Well, I mean, the panic that sets in when you fail something the second time in person is so real.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's like, you make a mistake, you're like, it's fine. And then you have it again, you're like, oh no, am I gonna be here all day? Oh.
Yeah, like Moss has just pointed out there in the chat, that particular run, I think by the end of it, the game had decided that it had tormented me enough, and it allowed me to get a one-shot on the final boss. So swings and roundabouts. I'm kind of disappointed now that I don't have Live Split open, because I feel like this has been a really good run to this point, and I'd be interested to know how I'm tracking in terms of against my PB. I'll have a rough idea with the in-game time as to whether it's a PB or not, but I won't know the exact amount because it's LRT, so
Yeah.
I don't know the exact time difference. I know it's around 11 to 12 minutes, but beyond that, I honestly couldn't say.
Yeah, your RTA time right now is about 56:40.
Yeah, it seems about right for this section.
But that's, you know, there's only so much you can glean from that when you are normally comparing to in-game time.
So I think the RTA, the LRT time that I got on the S rank was 1 hour 8 and change. I think the IGT at the end said 121 and change. So like I said, we'll have a rough idea, and I'll be able to tell on if it's an IGT PB, which if it's not going to be one without being the other. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to have an LRT time that's your PB, but the IGT isn't.
Yeah, unless your computer/console is having a hell of a day.
Yeah. Now we're just hoping that I don't make the really big amateur mistake that I made earlier on today when I was doing my final prep. And that really was...
Yeah. You definitely want to say that out loud. That's not going to jinx you at all.
See, I feel more like I'm trying to cry it out. Like if I talk about it, it's not going to happen. Whether
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
whether it works out that way or not, we will soon see. But it really, to be honest, the mistake that I made was one of those like really rare, like it you'd like to think it won't happen again. Wow, I shot off there. You'd like to think that it wouldn't happen again, and it was a real egg on face kind of moment. But these things happen from time to time. I think the one thing that people tend to dislike with this game from a casual standpoint is the amount of back and forth. There can be an awful lot of having to revisit areas when you don't know the game as well as what a speedrunner would do. And again, I can sort of appreciate that.
It's always fascinating when I look at the games that I speedrun and I watch someone casual play through it. The things that are different when you know, the things that are difficult when you know a lot about the game, and the things that are difficult when you don't know a lot about the game are never the same thing. And it's
Yeah.
always like the weird little things. You're like, oh, well, how would you ever die there? You just do this, this, and this, and this. But of course, they don't know that.
Yeah, and then the flip side to that as well is when you're watching somebody play a game casually that you're used to speedrunning, and they find things that you've completely forgotten around because it's not on your optimal route and it's been so long
Yeah.
since you saw it.
You're like, oh yeah, that guy's there, huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that can happen. Oh. One thing that you will notice during the Chris section is anytime we go into caution, I will be healing straight away because there are a lot of hunters that you're going to encounter with Chris, and we really don't want to be taking the risk of being one-shotted by them. No splits equals no pressure. I can definitely agree with that.
I've definitely PB'd a run that I've done without splits before. I just started recording and was like, well, we'll see if I get it.
Well,
and then I did, and I'm like, well, damn, now I have nothing to run against. That's kind of bad. I didn't really think that through. So I started doing runs again. I'm like, I guess I need to set new splits.
it's for that exact reason now where if I'm running offline, which I'll be honest is very, very rare. I don't often practice speedruns offline, but in the event that I do, for that exact reason, I now make sure that I record each run because I've had it before where, like you say, you know, I've done a run offline just for something to do, ended up hitting a PB, and I'm like, well, I can't submit it because I don't have any proof.
Good runners always local record their runs.
Yeah, 100%.
You never know when you're gonna accidentally PB.
Yeah, that whole accidental PB.
It's real, and it's a thing you should account for. Every now and again, you'll get lucky, and be like, oh, "God damn, no one saw me get lucky." CJ in chat pointing out that we are $20 away from $13.50. That is true. Let's keep that moving. Let's get those donations in. This has been a good day two. Day two can be tricky sometimes, and I think that we've actually done quite well today, but I would like to see us keep the push going. We got a few runs left. We got Clue. Got Waluigi's Taco Stand. I think we can turn this into a really, really nice first Saturday of SDAT.
Oh, he was going for me.
Just like that, we did get $10 from Captain Dino. Thank you so much for your contribution. That puts us up to 1340. Things are moving along great. Thank you so much.
Go on then, Dino. Thank you guys for the donations, though. It's all very much appreciated and going to a fantastic cause. But yeah, going back to what you were saying earlier about watching somebody casually play a game that you're used to speedrunning, sometimes I love to do that. When I first got into speedrunning, this was a game that I always said that I wasn't going to go anywhere near. Like, I wanted to keep this one held back for one that I could just enjoy as a casual playthrough. And I got talked out of that. So now, although I can't, because you'll know yourself, you can't really go back to enjoying a game casually that you used to speedrunning, because muscle memory will take over, and you just end up going into a run without even realising that you're doing it. So now, with Code Veronica, I kind of have my casual enjoyment of the game through watching somebody else experience it.
I completely get that.
But there's always the remake for me to enjoy casually. Because we will get it, won't we, Capcom?
We gotta hope that Monster Hunter Wilds does well, and they just got so much money they don't know what to do with. Start remaking a bunch of stuff. It's, we get we get a bunch of Capcom games every time Monster Hunter sells. So we gotta, fingers crossed that the new Monster Hunter is gonna be good, and then they're gonna have a bunch of money, and then they're gonna make a bunch more games.
Would be the dream. I did see they advertised. Was it a new Monster Hunter game that they advertised at Gamescom earlier in the week?
Yep, sure did. That's I am not a Monster Hunter player, but I have friends that are absolutely fanatics for Monster Hunter, and I wish them the best. Too much of a grind for me, but I like that they get those games.
Yeah, I've not really dabbled in Monster Hunter myself. I was about to ask, is it at first guess, had I not seen that trailer, I'd have been asking, well, with a name like that, is that just Capcom's answer to Pokemon? Well, yeah, it's definitely not Pokemon.
No, it is not at all. It's quite different. It is, as far as a monster fighting and catching game goes, it is a very different experience to Pokemon.
RE Survival was Capcom at their peak with RE. Yeah, alright.
Man, I forgot that game existed. Why'd you have to mention that?
Well, if you got that Survivor existed, then you will have definitely forgotten that Survivor 2 Code Veronica existed. And that game is just... Oh, it is so bad.
Oh, man.
Like, you can tell it was meant as an arcade game. It's almost like Time Crisis meets Resident Evil. But yeah, it was not good. So we're getting into the business end of the run now here. There's not an awful lot left to do. This is normally around about the time where, regardless of my pace, because I'm normally, I'd say between 10 to 20 seconds in the red or the green, one of the two. And it's normally this section that will, coming into this section that will tell me whether or not a PB is actually achievable. I mean, in theory, it's always achievable, but because my Chris section is quite... What's the word I'm looking for here? Quite strong. I'm quite good when it comes to the Chris section. There's not an awful lot of time save for me to find. So if I'm tracking, say, I'd say anything more than 25 seconds in the red when I come to the Chris section, then I would likely give up on a PB. But one thing that I do try and do with this game is, regardless of pace, never reset. Because with it being quite a lengthy run, I find that if you were to reset too early, then this is going to be the section then that you're finding that you're not playing as much as what you would do, and then you're going to end up being rusty with it.
Totally, yeah. I mean, that's the real peril of not finishing runs, is especially in games where the end has some obstacles in it, or even if it doesn't, it can start to become an obstacle because you're not as prepared.
Yeah, exactly. I think the Resident Evil game for a speedrun that's reset the most, it has to be 3 original, because there is so much RNG involved with that game that it's just unreal. And I just kind of feel that from a viewer's standpoint, when you're just constantly resetting and resetting, it can put people off. People don't want to see, 27 resets and no completed run. At least that's just my
100%.
personal opinion on it anyway.
No, and I think that it's especially, it can depend depending on the game, but usually when I'm watching runs, I mean, you really do want to see a quality run, but you also would like to see more than the first 10 minutes of a quality run, so it can be,
Yeah.
it can be a lot.
So this is an area where I changed my strategies quite recently. So normally what I would have done there, or what I used to do there, was I would pull out the shotgun, I'd wait for them to edge a little bit closer, and then I would shoot them upwards and make sure I got a critical hit to take them all out. But then I kind of thought, well, is that costing me more time than just simply battling through? And it turned out it did, and there was quite a significant difference as well. I think it was around 20 to 25 seconds difference.
That's a ton at the end of a run.
Yeah, well, something like that, as you'll know yourself, 20 seconds, that can be the difference between a PB and not a PB. It can be the difference between second place and world record.
And that kind of almost falls into a category of things that I hate, of you find out that the complicated strat you've been doing for years is slower than the easy, boring way. And you're like, oh, I'm just dumb. It's like, I hate so much. It's happened to me multiple times where I'm like, oh, okay. I'll take the PB now, but I'm mad that I just spent 6 months doing it a way harder strat that was actually slower.
Yeah, I can relate to that so much. I don't think I got a single bite from the ants.
I mean, that looked clean to me. Well,
Typically.
I spoke a little too soon.
That's me. Like, it happens so much when I'm practicing on my channel, and I'll say something like that, and exactly as what's just happened there, I'll go into the next area and take a couple of bites that I wouldn't normally, and I always sit there and think, why have I opened my mouth? Like, why did I say anything? Evidently, I don't like to learn. I also learned the hard way that you always want to be shooting that sweeper there. I mean, it is a tiny little bit slower than just running away, but your probability of being hit is quite high. And then if you hit, you're running the risk of being poisoned. And if you pick up a blue herb and mix it with your mixed herbs, not that you would have to, of course, but if you pick up a blue herb and mix it with your glitched herb, it then unglitches it, and there's just so much that could go wrong. Especially when, to make sure it goes right, it is literally just a case of one quick shot and then run. And then that guy would kill him because, well, I just don't like him.
He shouldn't have been standing there.
Yeah, exactly. It is always important, though, to make sure coming into this area now, going through these doors, that you have the grenade launcher equipped with Chris, because now it's about to go into the section where we take over as Claire again, for a very brief spell. And when we come back to Chris, we are thrown straight into a boss fight that we need the grenade launcher for. Now again, on an any percent run, you wouldn't see me picking those herbs up, because what I would have done is on the Nosferatu fight, I would have just simply grabbed the first aid spray that's in the corner. But because we're doing S rank,
Right.
we can't
Right.
use
Can't
the first
heal.
aid spray.
Yep.
I think that's the case with a lot of the earlier Resident Evil games. Using first aid sprays really affected your overall rank. I know it's quite similar in Resident Evil 2 original. It's got similar criteria to get the top rank.
I always think it's an interesting thing that some games will pop in to have to kind of like disincentivize using a lot of heals. In Castlevania 64, if you buy from the shopkeeper too much, you have to fight him as a boss before the final boss.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you can buy heals, and they're pretty cheap, but if you buy too many heals, you have to fight him before you go to the end.
I'm not gonna lie, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, fun fact, we're not making the same silly mistake that I made earlier. Because that was where it happened.
Did it involve getting hit by that giant axe?
Yeah, so what I did was, going into that, once the cutscene is finished, and it's really simple. You go in with one full heal, make sure that you're in fine when you're going in there, and it is literally, as soon as you gain control of Claire, quick turn, run. I decided to quick turn twice, so then he hit me before I started running off, which meant I don't have enough heals to survive. And it was such an amateurish sort of mistake, but one of those that, like I said earlier, it very, very rarely happens. But unfortunately, you know, that lapse in concentration is going to happen every now and again.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a marathon of a run, but it's over an hour. It's nothing trivial. You can definitely have those small mental mistakes start to creep in every now and again. It's not like you have much downtime either. You're kind of always in go mode here.
Yeah, there's not really any sections that allow you to, you know, even just quickly nip to the loo or grab a drink or what have you. It is, like you say, from the word go. You then constantly going. Sorry, well, English is hard for me today.
Nah, we got you. We got you.
I'm going to take these shells just in case. Again, it's not something that I would normally do, but the sweeper outside the residence took more bullets than what I had intended. When the English can't do the English. I thought it was a little bit too far away from that box there. Apparently not. Come on. Okay, home stretch, baby. The music that's about to start playing as well as we go into literally the final section. Oh, I love it. It's probably my favourite piece of music in any Resident Evil game. Bro, come on. Come on, I know you're going to try and mess things up for me this late, but no, come on. Here we go. Although it's this music, when you're on a really good pace, it's this music when it starts playing that makes you, I'm not going to say get nervous, but like it really, the reality of the moment sinks in. Oh, nice little double kill. So for the second time today, the self-destruct sequence has been activated. I think, and I've said this earlier on during practice, I think every single person, when playing this game for the first time, when the first self-destruct timer started, thought that they'd beaten the game, only to find out, yeah, you're only actually about halfway through.
Oh my god. Yeah. I'm always advocating that more games need Super Metroid-like escape sequences at the end, but having one in the middle is a different kind of stressful.
Okay, here we go. How many shots is final Alexia gonna take? Three. Now we mash cutscene skip as fast as we can. And that's time. Let's see what the final IGT was. 1:22:43. I think that's a little bit slower than the world record that I submitted. But obviously there was a few safety marathon strats that we took, so I'm hell of happy with that.
That was quite a clean run. There was really no big issues that had to be dealt with, one tiny moment at the beginning aside, but that didn't even really lose that much time. Really nice work. Good job.
Yeah, I'll be honest, if you'd have told me going into the run that it was going to be S rank, but then it would be less than 83 minutes, I'd have snatched it. I mean, you can tell the difference there in, you know, what I've submitted as the estimate. We're about 15 minutes below estimate there.
Yeah, every run of the day has been an absolute knockout, and yours was no exception. Really, really good job. So, before we head on to our break, tell the people where we can find you. Let's see if we can get a shout out in chat, please, and then yeah, let us know.
Yeah, so guys, you can find me live I don't actually have set days, but I'm normally like between 3 to 4 times per week over at twitch.tv / The Mancunian Nightmare. For the next week or so, I am going to be putting speedrunning down for a little bit and just going back to playing things a little bit more casually and going back to having some fun. But then once we've gotten through that, the world records that I have recently lost, we will be picking those categories back up and grinding back. So, you know, if that's your thing, if you like Code Veronica and you want to see some acceptable runs, then you know where to find us.
Love a revenge arc. That's great. All right. Well, thank you very much. Excellent work. Really appreciate your runs. And we are going to have a short break, and then we are going to be back with more of the action. Stay tuned.